Welcome back, everybody, to Markonomics 101 presents Hoot Loot, the place you come to be informed, be amused, but never be misled. We are going to talk today about the markets and how the only constant in the markets is change. And one of the things that I have stressed time and time again is not to have a world view, not to get stuck on a certain thing that has to happen because it's got all the reasons in the world to happen. The market will do what it wants to do. Today's show, November 3rd, 2021, is called Cryptos and Stocks Turn Bullish. Yeah, I know, me, Mr. Bear on everything. And all of a sudden, you got to look at the charts, and the charts is telling us that a big move up is ahead. I don't understand it, but I'm going to try to do my best to explain it to you. Anyway, we love to have you here. If what you do is like and subscribe down here, and we'll be back in a moment with the charts. All right, we have some great information with the charts. Behind me, you can see that I'm at the Marko Casino because everything is a matter of odds. That's what we try to pick as odds. Sometimes we don't get them quite right, but it's all about odds. It's all about investing is all about odds. Life is all about odds. So getting them as accurate as possible and as accurate information as you can have as possible, you'll be better off. So we're going to start off here with Tesla, the canary in the coal mine, and unbelievable what has happened with this company. It sold 100,000 cars apparently, but the deal's not concluded, to Hertz, and that was worth like $4 billion. Well, the stock is up since that sale was announced, or that proposed sale, because it's not actually a done deal yet. The stock's up $200 billion. It is now the fifth $1 trillion market cap company in the United States, and Elon Musk has made $70 billion in personal wealth on a deal worth $4 billion. You gotta love those odds. I mean, if I could do that every time, I'd be, I'd have something. Anyway, the second canary in the coal mine is Bitcoin. Now, I have been bearish on it. I've had a world view that was not very favorable on it. I have not changed my view of what it is. It's a bunch of passwords. It's a fraud. However, Bitcoin and a lot of the other, we're going to show a lot of the other cryptos, and they've started to have positive patterns. We can't ignore that because you don't want to be caught the wrong way on something like that. And even if you have a million reasons to hate it, the charts and the price action is what counts. What counts is where it goes, not what you think it should go, not where you should think. So Bitcoin is not quite made a new high. It had an ETF come out, but there's good demand for it. It's close to its old highs. It could break them. We don't know. We'll see. So now we go to the Dow Industrials, and look at that. One of the things we said last week was all of the indexes were in long consolidation patterns. They had gone sideways for months and months and months and months, months and months and months and months. And now what that meant was that if they broke up, that was going to be very powerful. If they broke down, that was going to be very powerful. Well, lo and behold, thank God we didn't have a world view on it. But I would have guessed down for a million reasons, and all of them, like this one, have broken up. The NASDAQ 100 broken up also, didn't make a double top, and the S&P small caps have broken up. I mean, this is important. When you have small cap companies like the little sort of emerging growth companies breaking higher, that is a huge positive for the market, and they were doing terribly for a while. So this is a very significant signal that stocks are heading higher, and as much as I hate to admit I was wrong about that, in some of my thoughts, I was wrong, and they are heading higher. We've got to factor in information that is up to the minute, and this is up to the minute. So the next one is the S&P 500. It's also made a new high. It had made a new high last week, and it started to give a hint that maybe everything was starting to break up, and sure as hell did. The Dow Jones Transportations, oh my God, these things have just soared. And there's something called the Dow theory signal. If both the transportations and the industrials make new highs simultaneously, that's a bull market signal. The transportations are going nuts. There is a bad print on this here, but they have broken up definitely. And we started to see that they had moved wonderfully last week and looked really strong. The US dollar is another one that is a complete puzzler to me. why the U.S. dollar, when so much of it is just flying around the country like crazy, has maintained its value is just a sheer mystery. But it has, and as long as the dollar is strong like that, the Fed has the ability to control things that they control, like interest rates. We're going to talk about the Fed today and what they do and what they don't do. Now, this is first we're going to talk about some of the cryptos. Bitcoin Cash is not one of the ones that looks really good. I would not want to, bet my bottom dollar on this one rallying because it's kind of and it's run by an ex-felon. So, Ethereum though has made a new high. Now, Ethereum is a real entity. There is an actual presence. There's some kind of operations that go on. It does something. Now, the one thing I want to state about cryptos is that, I've never needed one. I don't know if you have, but I've never needed one for any use at all. And it's a lot different than when the internet was in a bubble. You knew that the internet would have value in electronic communication. Crypto, I don't need it for anything. There's nothing that I need a crypto for other than to gamble with. And so far, no one can show me that there's a need for these things. But we'll see. Oops, went a little too far there. Overstock.com is probably the company, the retailer that has most associated with Bitcoin. It was the first one to take it for transactions. It's used, Bitcoin is used for transactions about 1/2 of 1% of the time, but Overstock has broken out, and it usually follows Bitcoin for whatever reason. It seems to be sort of a Bitcoin proxy, and we put it here, and this is one of the reasons that we think there might be a good size rally coming up in cryptos. The next one's MicroStrategies. It's also broken out. Now that's another reason because it's bought on the open market a ton, and it's actually made a profit on its Bitcoin, and it's looking like it may have broken out. So here's another little sign that cryptos may have yet another life in them. We don't know quite yet. Robinhood Markets, now that one, came out as an IPO. It went all the way back down to its IPO price. It's pretty much acted terribly. This was a reason we were not totally positive, but it's had a fairly good move in the last day or so, so we'll have to see. Robinhood is one that, again, is associated with crypto trading and some of the new types of buyers that are in the market. So we've also got the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. This one is acting actually very well. This is a sort of an ETF. It's a way to play Bitcoin without actually having to own Bitcoin. Now, I don't know how you own Bitcoin because it is nothing. It doesn't exist. It is a non-entity. You cannot give somebody a Bitcoin because there's nothing to give them. But nonetheless, we have to have huge value for it. Okay, so this is called Coinbase. Coinbase is probably the largest broker of some of these, and it did very poorly after its IPO, and that's another reason why we weren't too positive on cryptos, but it's starting to rally. It's looking pretty good for cryptos, like there's good demand for them. I think a lot of institutions are starting to buy them. There's a sucker born every minute, as W.C. Field said. I don't know. I find it amazing that somebody could actually do an analysis of this thing and find that it was worth buying, but what the hell, And finally, the Bitcoin, this is the ETF that came out. It absorbed, more than $1 billion of value, the largest ETF ever. And this one traded badly. It's starting to trade a little bit better. We'll follow it. This chart doesn't tell us a whole lot yet. And finally, Ripple has broken out. So here's another one that is a real entity, and it's actually made a triangle and broken out, and it looks pretty positive. So on net, we have, also Riot Blockchain. It's not a positive, but it's not a negative. It hasn't broken down, and one could easily see this one going up. So I would give this one, again, like a neutral. And so when you look at the cryptos as a group, all of a sudden they've gone from negative looking to somewhat positive looking, and one could actually, see that there's another burst of activity coming. I don't know, but I'm telling you, they are turning bullish. I would not be negative on them right now, even though there's every reason in the world to be negative on them, like they're nothing. But anyway, on the inflation side, now the Fed had a meeting today. It's called the Open Markets Committee meeting, where they get together and they decide what they're going to do. They had something today called a taper. Now, what a taper is, the way to think of the Fed is like a drug dealer. Okay, the Fed's drug of choice is money. So they hand out money like crazy, 120 billion, 130 billion a month to buy, securities that the Treasury has issued. So in other words, we're buying for ourselves from ourselves at a bad price. But in any event, that's what they do. So they announced today that their taper had gone down from 130 to like 115, which was basically like telling a drug, your drug client, well, I'm sorry, I don't have 3 kilos today. I only have 2.5 kilos or 2 3/4. I mean, a taper of that sort is not really a taper at all. You're still feeding money into the system. You're still feeding more into the system than even quantitative easing, many years ago. So to make it sound like all of a sudden, your discipline is ridiculous. And here's one sign of it. Treasury inflation protected securities. Well, they've come up, they've come down. We're going to see how these go, but they still indicate that there is some inflation risk that the Fed refuses to acknowledge. The 5-year yield has gone up like crazy. It's actually at 120. Now, what's interesting about the 5-year yield is that the shorter maturities, like 5 years, and here's 10. They like 5-year has made a huge new high, and the 10-year has not. Look at the 10; it's gone up, but it's not made a new high. Now the 30 has it's gone nowhere. So what that means is that you have shorter dated maturities, like 5, that are going up like crazy, like 50 basis points, and you have 30s which are going down by like 50 basis points. That's called a yield curve flattening. So when you have a smaller differential between the long end and the short end, you have what's called a flattening. And a flattening is very significant because when yield curves flatten, they tend to be very depressing on the economy and the banking sector. So this right now is not saying anything quite yet, but it's something to keep an eye on, and it's a fairly fast flattening. So, the Fed has not mentioned anything about it at all, but we're going to mention it here because it is significant and it is something that needs an eye kept on. Now, inflation, once again, the Fed, says inflation's under control. Well, it is kind of for a reason. Now, here's the CRB index of commodities. Here's the last year. Look at that. This thing has just gone straight up. So, that it's not saying that. This is the 20-year CRB index monthly, and look at that move. That is a huge move. If there is an inflation with a move like that, I don't know when there is. Crude oil also has gone up week after week after week after week after week, and shale oil is still not competitive. It's still not something that's adding to the supply. I don't know how much more crude oil has to go in it, but winter, a lot of energy products are used, especially in heating, and those things are going to make prices go up. This is the most important commodity there is. This goes into just about everything that is made, including itself. So something to keep an eye on. Copper miners. Now, all of a sudden, building type products are not going up as much. So there is some reason to think that the economy is actually slowing in parts and bursting in parts. So this is one of the places that is slowing in parts, and the housing market is not going up like it was before. So we're seeing that happen. Now, the agriculture fund, well, what we all like to eat good food, and good food is going up in price. Just about every food maker, including McDonald's, is going up. Pretty soon, you're not going to be able to afford a Big Mac. You can maybe have a Little Mac, but that's about it. So agriculture, all the food products are still going up, but not as much as they were before. The now here we go. Natural gas is big in Europe, and Russia controls a huge amount of supply. This is a huge risk to all of us right here, because natural gas can really go up very high and make life quite expensive. So now gold, this is a 20-year chart of gold. The reason I'm showing a 20-year chart is because gold is something that ought to be rallying here. Gold should be a lot higher than it is. I have said, and I've had a worldview of gold going, way up here, but it's still in a positive pattern if you just look at it over 20 years. I mean, basically, it's in a nice consolidation pattern, and when this thing breaks, it's going to go. At some point, it will go, because people are going to wake up one day and go, wait a minute, I own a password? Wait a minute, sell my password, hurry, sell, sell, sell. That's what's going to happen one day. People are going to open their eyes and go, oh, I've been taken. Silver is in a pattern, and I also used a longer run pattern here because when you look at a short pattern, it's not really giving you that much information. Silver's in what's called a cup and handle, and it's basically a very bullish pattern. Silver, I think, too, will at some point be a very, very good investment. I wouldn't want to get into it right now or gold because right now the forces that are holding it down are extremely heavy. The Fed does not want to see high gold prices or high silver prices because those indicate they're not doing a great job. And, we don't want to see that. Now, these I've shown a couple times, and I'm going to show them again because these are very indicative of a bull market to come in stocks. The CBOE is the Chicago Board Options Exchange, and it's publicly traded. It's broken out of a parabola and a bear flag, and it's broken out positively. This is a reason why I think we're looking at a huge move in stocks right now, is because things that are stock related. Oh, here's another one. Here's the owner of the NYSE. It's called ICE. It is not going to put you in jail for not paying, not being legal. It's basically the owner of the New York Stock Exchange, publicly traded. But look at that move. It's a breakout. How can you possibly argue that a bear market's coming when something like this shows? And then you look at NASDAQ, and this thing is just booming like crazy. So, when an exchange is doing really well, that is an incredibly powerful sign that good things are happening. And I can't tell you why everything looks like it's so good here, but it really does, and you have to pay attention to it. And here's some of the stocks here too that are the mega stocks. These are important. Apple is just, again, earnings report this week. We're going to make a difference. And that's what I argued on Saturday. I said earnings reports, if they're good, we're going to see the markets break up. If they're bad, we'll see them break down. We've seen more often than not really good earnings reports, and the stocks are just unbelievably ripping. Apple's doing pretty well, but Amazon hasn't quite broken up and is not quite there yet, but it's still at least a neutral. But Facebook is probably the one that is in the most amount of trouble. Mark Zuckerberg, who is Mark QR Zuckerberg, the humanitarian of the year, the man who, the Dalai Lama of business. Okay, now he is such a good man. I mean, he's changed Facebook's name now is Metaverse because it is only such a good and virtuous company, and it doesn't involve itself in sex trafficking. It doesn't have any kind of scamming that goes on, WhatsApp or Instagram. It doesn't cause little, girls to have emotional disturbance, which they have in their own internal memos. This company is just unbelievable, run by an unbelievable man. And, we've had a lot of stuff about him. I don't even want to talk about him anymore. But I'm surprised it's actually held up this much, but it really has. Held up pretty well considering the news on it. Google, unbelievable. I mean, here's a company that is growing at a rapid pace that's huge. I mean, normally the law of size, there's a law of size. It's hard to grow at a rapid rate when you're already big. And look at this thing. This thing has just gone crazy. So, right now, this is what's pulling the markets up, and I wouldn't want to get in the way of it. I mean, it shouldn't be. I don't know how it's gotten this high other than the fact that it's had a little help from the feds and the U.S. government and squashing competition, as have all of the big tech companies, the fraud squad, as I like to call them. But Google is just looking great, and so is Microsoft. Look at that, great earnings. It's up there with Apple, $2.5 trillion. Apple and Microsoft together would be one of the largest countries in the world, GDP wise. It would be like number 2 or number 3, something like that, on the US and China. Unreal, but they just keep going up. And that's why, a lot of people like me don't really want to touch that because it's going straight up, but they continue to, and they continue to do amazingly well. Netflix is another one that's broken out from a long consolidation period, which we've shown you. And this thing looks like it's ripping up too. Had a good earnings report. Nvidia is a semiconductor company and is now kind of the poster child for semiconductors on the NASDAQ. And it is just going crazy. It makes chips for cryptos, which of course, cryptos are something that are just sacred to everybody. And it also makes gaming chips, which another place for addiction. The bank index is doing pretty well, still going up. Looks like it's actually doing pretty well, although the yield curve flattening is starting to, compress a little bit of its movement, but it's still healthy. I mean, you can't really complain because it's still in an uptrend and still looking good, as is Big Pharma. Big Pharma, now I got to tell you this. Pfizer, which is the jab maker of choice, has now said that they're going to earn revenues of $40 billion from jabs alone, which is more than the rest of the company combined. So jabbing is good business, and all I got to say is, there's nothing like a flu to get the economy going. And here, the broker dealer index now, this is where these are starting. This is also acting very positively. There's a big calendar of new issues, and there's a huge appetite for new issues. All those new issues that just they basically spawn hope. It's kind of like there's just hope, and that you're going to hit the jackpot, and that's what they prey on when they sell a lot of these new issues that are real crap. And I can tell you that the whole point is to engage the buyer, the novice buyer, in hope. And that's really kind of the Tesla thing. It's all about hope. And I don't know how much of it is actually going to end up being reality. We'll see. I may be wrong on that one, but we'll see. FedEx is a major transportation company, and this one's not doing very well. So even though the transportations as a group are doing well, it's the shippers and it's the rails that are doing well. Believe it or not, I just read Los Angeles has 60,000 container ships off of its port that are in a queue, each costing $100 a day in penalties. So, the logistics problem and the bottlenecks are huge, and they are just dismissed and swept under the rug. And at some point, they're going to come home to roost. And FedEx is having those kinds of problems. Now, when we look at Mastercard, it's broken down. Now, this is one of the reasons I think that the economy is not as strong for as long, even though the markets look good. And it's companies like Mastercard. I mean, people have already probably maxed them out, and are and so right now they don't have a whole lot of spending power left. And this is a really good indication of retail spending. Retail spending being 70% of the economy, which is why I put it in there. Now, UPS, and now look at this. When you compare this to FedEx, it's an incredible type of move, and looks like a double top, but it's also very strong, and it tends to suggest a stronger economy. Um, and then finally, Visa, which is broken down just like MasterCard, doesn't look too good. And if you look at American Express, Discover, you can see credit card companies are not looking that good. And that is an initial sign that things are out there, even though if I look at all of the charts together and I put them together, we're still looks like things are turning bullish, despite the fact that there's a lot of reasons not to like this. So, and then, Walmart also, and I mentioned last week, and this is something that just blows my mind. They're selling Bitcoin in vending machines. Now, for 10% or 11% commission, you can go in there, buy Bitcoin, okay, at their vending machines. Walmart is not exactly going to put Bitcoins in vending machines unless they know suckers are going to buy them. So, they're thinking, oh my God, we'll get the last buyer, the buyer that can go nowhere else to get it. They can buy the vending machine here. And everybody has to own Bitcoin to be hip, except me. I'm already so damn hip without Bitcoin. I don't even need it. If I had a Bitcoin, I'd be so hip I couldn't stand it. So finally, digital world acquisition. Now, I want to follow this, and because it's got political ramifications. Now, I would have guessed that yesterday there was a surprise victory in Virginia of the Republican candidate, that this would have probably gone up on that. It didn't. Now, there should be companies coming out that are going to be good predictors of political fortune. So I'm going to keep following this, but it didn't do a good job of predicting that. But let me predict one thing. You will get nothing but the truth here. We are here to serve you and basically give you the best information we can. Please like and subscribe down here. And we love being in the Marko Casino. We'd love to see you here, and maybe you can win a few slots. In any event, we will see you next Saturday. And over and out, and like and subscribe, and talk to you soon.